Stay tuned. GrokTALK begins in 1 minute.
Another edition of GrokTALK, brought to you by New Hampshire's leading conservative blog site, GrokTALK.com. We are your feared, extremist, right-wing, hard-charging, gun-toting, opinionated, outspoken, rabble-rousing, letter-writing, radio microphone stomping conservatives and rational libertarians. So get ready for more news and opinion you could only get from GrokTALK.com.
GrokTALk.
Good morning, universe. Gosh, I don't know. We could be talking to anybody, really, at this point. GrokTALK, brought to you by GrokTALK.com and the Coalition of New Hampshire Taxpayers, coming to you from New Hampshire's leading conservative blog site. Leading conservative blog site. Thank you. I got the thumbs up. You can listen to this and past programs on Spreaker, Stitcher Radio, iTunes, TuneIn, iHeartRadio, and, of course, we are on Facebook and Twitter. Check us out at GrokTALK.com. You should enjoy the program. We are getting Rick Perry on the phone, Governor Rick Perry, as we speak. July 4th, we got the wrong week.
Yeah, we thought it was this week.
Yeah, that's not going to happen. Anyway, so we do not have Governor Rick Perry.
We can do something.
We don't. Unfortunately, there has been some confusion. So for those of you who are tuning in and reading my tweets and going, oh, Governor Rick Perry is going to be on GrokTALK, we don't have Governor Rick Perry, so I apologize because we thought we had him. But you have us. And we're not necessarily as good, but we're here every week on the 4th or otherwise. So plenty of things to talk about this week. It's been a very, very interesting week for the rule of law. The rule of law was taken into an alley and bludgeoned into submission not once but twice this week by the Supreme Court. Words do not mean anything, and are you done there over there or what? Skip's having a conversation. You know, we don't have a separate room for phone calls and stuff. It's just we're not that slick. We're not that. Oh, hang on. I forgot you were down there. Sorry.
Yeah. So we don't have Bo Snerdley screening them in a separate room.
We don't have anybody.
Okay, very good, sir.
Screening in a separate room would be if there was a screen in that window out there in CNHT's office. So
yeah.
Here he comes. We have Skip, though.
Hello.
Which is awesome.
So what's the news, Skip?
Here I am, Mo.
Right, so I knew that Perry was in state on the 3rd and 4th. He's going to do a couple of the July 4th parades.
Correct.
And we had been talking about getting him on for next Saturday until Steve reminded me we're going to be good doobies and take the July 4th off. So it looks like they thought we were talking about the 4th, and Steve was scheduling for today.
I was scheduling for a show we were actually doing, yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Silly me.
So we're, by the way, we're not doing July 4th?
No.
Uh-oh, then we're going to have to talk to Mr. Dennehy again.
Well, there are certain things for which it's worth at least making the effort. We may have to meet him somewhere.
Well, you're going to have to work it out because I'm not going to be here. I'm not coming in on the 4th. That's already
okay.
That's already a given.
I'm
so
either here or I'm at one of the parades.
Okay.
We can do that. Anyway, enough of that for our audience. We will catch up with Governor Perry because he's one of many that are worth catching up with.
Oh, absolutely. We definitely want to have him on the show.
And
while we're on the topic of Mr. Perry, Governor Perry, who watched last week's Fox News Sunday?
I have not actually watched it yet.
You need to watch it, and I need to retrieve it before it's lost. Chris Wallace went full liberal on him. and he was quite firm in his response.
I saw that some people were writing that up, and it's like, okay.
How dare you not expand Medicaid? How dare you not set up a state exchange? You are mean to the poor and downtrodden.
I'm getting so sick and tired of that line.
That's
It's like,
freaking
you know
Fox
something?
News.
Is government supposed to do absolutely everything? Are we supposed to outsource personal responsibility at every single turn so that we don't have to, we assuage our guilt feelings by just saying, somebody else in government will do it. Oh, so I feel just grand about it. Instead of doing the hard work of doing the canvassing for the money and actually turning to and actually doing the work yourself. Why is it always, and this is for the liberals, an open-ended question, why is it always government's responsibility to do everything? Are you that lazy?
And I think they are. And they don't have the guts to come out and ask you for the money directly and say, will you contribute to this worthy charity? So they steal it from you instead. Well,
it's getting to the point, and even though this last year was a record-setting year for philanthropy here in the U.S., more money was given. It's like over $500 billion, if I remember what I read a couple of weeks ago. Over $500 billion was raised and given away by U.S. citizens, which is not an insubstantial amount of money there, folks.
No,
and they call us cheap, and the left has the cojones to say that's not enough or that's insufficient.
And by the way, most conservatives check the philanthropy ratio or whatever it's called of the charities that they give to, and the good ones give 70, 80, 90% of the money that comes in to the cause and spend as little as possible on overhead and fundraising, as opposed to the Clinton Global Graft Initiative, which has an 85% self-indulgence ratio.
Correct. You know, and it saddens me because obviously with the decisions of this week of, you know, government has, I'm not sure that there's any escaping government at all. I grow scared, frankly.
Yeah, I don't want the government messing with my health care. They're already messing with it. They're already making it more expensive. They're already costing me huge deductibles. This is no fun.
No, I'm looking at not just the Obamacare decision, but also the decision that was let out just before that, which has to do with disparate incomes, where the state of Texas, and I wanted to ask Governor Perry about this, where the state of Texas.
It was a state of Perry for a very long time. That's not a bad Freudian slip there.
Sued HHS over the use of disparate outcome use statistically to prove unconscious racism. Well, at this point, I can manipulate statistics too, and basically it just gives the government the ability to declare everybody racist, no matter what.
Unconscious racism.
And
it basically says, if poor people live in poor neighborhoods, it's our fault, not theirs.
Well, here's the thing. For years, folks, we've been talking about the Sustainable Community Initiative, oftentimes referred to as Agenda 21, where the feds were going to take over local zoning. Well, guess what, folks? Here it is. So we've been saying this for years, and you called us tinfoil hat nutcases. Well, guess what? It's here. And frankly, I hope all of these liberal, hoity-toity rich enclaves are going to start seeing low-rent duplexes next to their big McMansions. I would have defended you guys earlier, but you have brought this upon yourselves. And I hope that your property values get halved. But, you know, this isn't just that. This is the ultimate end of Alinsky. Alinsky was not always, just to put progressive forward. This was the fight of the haves versus the have-nots. And Alinsky would do anything to get the have-nots to have what the haves have. So,
wow, you actually said that without stumbling. I'm impressed.
Yeah,
that's damn impressive.
Don't ask me to do it again.
How much wood would a woodchuck chuck?
Yeah, we're going to have to go back to the tape for that one.
But, you know, essentially this is taking away from the haves. So you no longer have the right to free association. This is the ultimate tool, because the Alinskyites actually believe that the white flight and the rich blacks out of the urban areas stole their took the urban cities' tax money. That's how they look at it. They think it is theft. So now
it's
they're
the
going
theft that drove them out, of course.
Well, yeah, but they don't see it that way. They say, you guys didn't give enough, so we're coming to take it back from you where you live.
Well, they've done that in more than one way. I mean, how many large cities have in fact declared their exurbs, or at least their suburbs, to be part of the greater metropolitan area?
Yeah. For exactly that reason.
Right. London did it.
Just like Thatcher, they run out of other people's money, so they're going after a new set of people. And that's in effect. Now they don't even have to go after the money. They're just going to ship the people in.
Right. The only way to get away from this is to live in small enclaves in places that these people don't want to live and be well armed.
Well, I'm not sure that a whole lot of people want to go way up north and live. More power to you.
I was thinking Texas.
That's possible. Greg Abbott is standing tall. Stand up, Chuck. But seriously, Greg Abbott is a fine character, and he is standing tall on lots of things. And he is looking forward to signing the open carry legislation very soon. And he's not standing for any nonsense, and he will go after the feds.
Well, this is another great. This whole week has been sort of a 10th Amendment center sort of event where you have states who can point at the Constitution, regardless of what the Supreme Court says, because they're part of the federal government, and go, it's still not in there. Whatever it is, doesn't matter the issue. And the court decides things all the time that don't make any damn sense on both sides.
Yeah.
The interpretation, some of the language they use, some of the hoops they leap through to come to their conclusions, when the answer is really very, very simple. And, of course, Ian Underwood has explained it repeatedly in very simple language. The words mean something. If they don't mean something, then none of the words mean anything, basically.
No, you're absolutely right. And, every decision has a consequence, one type or another. And I think the consequence of what was decided without using real words in black and white are going to have horrible ramifications. And at this point, I am hoping that this is going to backfire on liberals in ways they find inconceivable.
Well, that was how I started my one comment on King v. Burwell. Yeah. They're going to be all happy jumping, dancing in the streets until somebody else does something they don't like and justifies it with that freaking law, that decision. It's not a law.
Yeah, I'm rapidly getting to the point though that I think we're going to see a breakdown because this basically proves, along with Bruce Jenner and Rachel what's-her-face, that I can be a woman, I can be another race. There's that picture of Bruce Jenner's cat, which is the dog.
Dolezal, the gal from Oregon or wherever it was, who claimed she was black so she could lead an NAACP chapter.
Well, I mean, she's been doing this for a long time, but you look at this stuff and you go, the left is defending this. The left has no sense of reality except for what it wants. And that's the thing that most people don't get. They do have a reality that they wish to put upon the rest of us. And at that point, at some point, there is going to be a literal flashpoint, just like the shot heard round the world, that will prove to the liberals that it can happen here in America. Because I think a lot of conservatives this week have expressed such anger, outright anger.
Right.
That something's going to happen pretty soon.
Well, I think so.
He says we have to leave.
Oh, okay.
We don't have to leave. We just have to take a little standby while this happens right here. Pay attention.
This is the Coalition of New Hampshire Taxpayers. We're located at 8 North Main in Concord, New Hampshire. This is a repository for all things conservative and municipal. So if you have a problem in your town, your school, your budget committee, the right to know law, and now the top of our list is voter fraud. You have a tip for us, some information for us, you want to join or help us out, cnht.org.
Hi, this is Rich Gerard, host of Gerard at Large in the Morning, the Manchester area's only locally owned, locally operated, focused, and interested riveting radio show, heard live every Monday through Friday from 6 to 9 on 90.7 FM WLMW New Hampshire Family Radio, and available 24/7 live or archived at GerardAtLarge.com. Be sure to tune in.
Need a little upbeat music. The world, as we know it, is different today than it was yesterday. Thank you very much.
Well, it's
But you know what? It's that bright, shiny, hidden lining somewhere underneath. It's just going to come back and bite him in the butt. You have to think that. Otherwise, you just go out and shoot yourself. Because, I mean, nothing's going in the right way.
No. There's no way I'm shooting myself.
no.
No, there are people
As
who
long as that bright light behind the clouds is not an EMP, we'll be fine.
Well, I mean, even if it is, we're still going to have to make it work.
Yes, we are.
Just
So,
the
with
way
our
it
Stone
is.
Age tools and the few things we got in anti-static bags,
Right.
yes.
Beat people with your laptop as you run away and try to save ammo, you know?
Yeah.
Now, I think we're going to see. I'm going to say it now. I think President Obama has been one of the most successful presidents we have ever had, given what his original purpose was. 5 days before he ascended his throne, he said, we are 5 days from fundamentally transforming America. And I have to say, a lot of conservatives just said he was a bad president. I think he's been extremely successful in doing what he wanted, and I think America has been transformed.
Well, I think they meant bad according to the the job description.
Correct.
So, I mean, as far as the job, I mean, if you were hiring somebody to seal your driveway and they drove a van through your house, that's not really success as far as the job description is concerned.
But I think that's the whole problem.
Well,
Everybody judged him against previous standards of, the job description. He had a completely different agenda at heart, and so did the
Well,
left.
you know, and the other problem isn't just that, because the system is supposed to protect us against this kind of nonsense, and
yes,
it doesn't. And everybody who has had any opportunity to do anything about it has caved.
So good. So let's get back to the system and its problems and why we still keep hearing calls for a third party. And we got a call for a third party. Somebody phoned Mama last night and asked about our 603 Alliance training that's going on next door in the Piccolo Opera Studio, and expressed her extreme desire to start a third party. Now, that's not what we're about, but the calls for that are going to grow, and here's why. In 2010, there was a huge conservative wave as a reaction to Obama, but mostly to Obamacare. And we put them into office, and they didn't repeal Obamacare.
Hi, come on in.
And they didn't they didn't do any significant damage to the agenda, and they went along with a bunch of the things. So in 2012, Obama got reelected to continue his success in dismantling our freedoms. And lo and behold, more bad stuff happened. There was another big reaction in 2014. A bunch more conservatives were sent down. A Senate majority was acquired, and they still fold like cheap tents every time, or broken umbrellas, whatever, every time Obama wants something. The only thing I think where they're right and the Democrats are wrong is on this trade partnership, but I still think the outcome could turn bad.
Oh, I disagree totally on what they're doing. If Obama has been as bad as what they keep telling us from D.C., why, absolutely why, are they giving him ultimate power? I mean, this just makes no sense, which was one of the questions I was going to ask Governor Perry if indeed we had gotten our schedule straight, which is, without a whole lot of run-up, the basic question is, why are the D.C. Republicans such wusses unless they're absolutely in cahoots with Obama? I mean, it goes back to Codillo's whole idea of the country class versus the political class. Yeah. And I am at wit's end.
Angelo Codevilla, yeah.
Yeah, and I am from my alma mater, BU. Yeah. I am thinking now, for the first really serious time, of saying, I've had it with the Republicans, that I'm ready to leave the Republican Party because they don't follow the rule of law. They have their own law. They have their own principles. And yet, you've got Juliana Bergeron signing onto that amicus brief for gay marriage, totally against the party platform.
Steve Dupree raising funds for Planned Parenthood.
Yeah, the Action Fund that's actively going to go after another Republican. Now, I don't want her back. I don't want Kelly Ayotte back in office, but for totally different reasons. You screwed us over on promises, just like Frank Ginta.
Yeah.
And then there was the platform scam because they wanted to protect the top of the ticket. Well, we showed them who was boss. But why should I support a party that doesn't support us.
What doesn't support the principles that it purports to have and that its grassroots buy into. And campaign after campaign, the grassroots fall for the principles, and then the party fails to follow through. And it did it in 2014, just like it did in 2010. And they wonder why they have a hard time holding on to their gains. And we also get down to the system trying to protect us. The system has been breaking down for a long time, and I'm going to trace it back to one of my old bugaboos, which is the 17th Amendment. That and Woodrow Wilson, which always has Glenn Beck froth at the mouth, for frankly good reasons.
Can we get rid of him as being a racist, just as bad as the battle flag of the Northern Confederate Army?
He showed up to offer condolences to the folks in Charleston. And
Woodrow Wilson?
No.
Glenn Beck?
Yeah. Oh, sorry. I thought you were wondering about...
No. Let's get rid of Woodrow Wilson. I mean, if we're going to go after the South, which is the Democrat plan, is to get rid of anything that's Republican or anything that, as Ann Marie Banfield's going to talk about, anything that gets rid of traditional values like parental values, or in parental notification, all that stuff.
Or the founders, or their plain language.
The whole thing. Yeah. The whole kibosh.
Yeah, there are so many comments to make about this week's happenings. We're going to run out of time to get all the words out.
And Anne Marie's head is going, which one? Right. They don't shut up.
So the 17th Amendment allowed the senators effectively to be separated from their role of truly representing the states under pain of recall by the state legislatures. Yeah. And so now what you have is things that go on in D.C. where the Senate ought to be standing up for the rule of law, and it does not, and it has no reason to.
Neither house does. They should, like I said, they are wusses. Yeah. If they were really serious about stopping Obama, they would have used the power of the purse, and when Obama decided that I'm not going to accept it, I'll let the government shut down, they should have said, fine by us. I mean, we're seeing the same... since I've become a political blogger, I've been saying whatever happens in D.C. ends up happening here in Concord. What do we see? The same thing. Are the Republicans going to cave? You betcha.
They already caved.
They already caved. We have Medicaid expansion.
They caved. No, they caved on the budget. They caved fast.
Yeah.
I thought they're doing an extension.
They did a continuing resolution.
Well, yeah, but that's
the same thing. It's just no budget with a budget.
But at least with a continuing resolution, the amount that we're putting out or spending still stays the same. Under the new budget, we're going to be spending more.
There is no political pain to the veto. None.
No.
She will be the first governor probably to not lose an election after vetoing a budget because the Republicans said, here's a little red carpet you can walk down. Nobody's going to suffer, least of all you, Governor Hassan.
Yeah. I mean...
In fact, they are transforming themselves into the minions of Despicable She.
Well, they are actually proving, both in D.C. and here in Concord. You'd never know I've been on a month-and-a-half sabbatical to get away from this
it's been building up.
Oh, yeah.
Somebody pulled their finger out of the dike and water just goes everywhere. Political water.
But I just forgot what I was going to say.
That's the little dams in Holland, not the other thing.
They are proving what we in the grassroots have been saying for years, and they absolutely hate, which is, you're the party of we'll spend just a little less, but we'll manage it more. And they get mad when we say that. That's all you stand for. You're Democrat juniors.
Yeah,
Junior.
And in order to do that, they have to borrow just like the Democrats do. And that's truly what is going to destroy this country, is the destruction, the debasement, debauchery of the currency. Because, if, as the Democrats accuse them of, the Republicans lower taxes and don't cut spending, what you have is huge deficits and a path to bankruptcy. The Democrats raise taxes and increase spending more, so that they too are on a path to bankruptcy. There is no escape from this until you finally get somebody that says, "I'm going to cut spending until it comes into line with revenues, and we're going to stop printing." And there'll be temporary turbulence in the financial markets, and the dollar will skyrocket, and eventually things will become good.
Has any Republican brought up the fact that the Obama administration has said we have been $1 below the national sanctioned debt rate for 90 days? Does anybody believe that we haven't broken through this?
You mean the debt ceiling?
The debt ceiling.
I didn't realize we were
90 days. It's been frozen. According to the Obama administration. Does anybody believe this?
No.
So King Canute has said the tide has to stop here. The red ink has got to pause for 90 days.
Oh, but Obama said, I will heal the earth. And I will
lower the oceans.
And I will heal our racial acrimony.
Apparently that means something else to him.
It would appear that what he really
Both
meant...
the words heal and acrimony do not have the same definition.
So he will lower our standard of living. He will divide the races, not the waters, and he will pour oceans of gasoline upon race relations.
That's pretty accurate. Yeah.
Does that rate with my have and have-nots?
Yeah, no, that's not bad. That's not bad.
Grok shots.
Maybe. You never know.
Ann Marie's getting really dizzy over here.
Only so many hours in the day, though. You know.
Yeah, that's why I had to quit for a while.
Yeah.
And then this week kind of just brought me short. Just like, when you put your dog out on a run with the lead, and they run quick, and they get to the end of the lead at full trot, and they go, burp! Yeah.
This is a great week to be ignorant. If you don't pay any attention to anything, you're just happy as a clam.
Sunshine and lollipops, the gays are celebrating in the streets. What could possibly go wrong?
People are like, oh, did you hear something about gay marriage? Oh, I don't know. That's not the argument, and we started the show. We were going to start the show with this. It really has nothing to do with those particular issues. It has everything to do with what the words mean, what the laws mean. The Supreme Court has made it perfectly clear that the English language has nothing to do with what laws really mean.
Yeah, and not even the law has anything to do with what the law
And the law as written
means.
has nothing to do, and the Constitution has nothing to do with what law really
Feelings.
means. It's like, I was trying to find a way to come up with a simple explanation for this on the way here, and I'm thinking, so say you're driving 54 in a 50, and a cop pulls you over, and he writes you a ticket for speeding in a 35-mile-an-hour zone. And you're like, wait a minute, it said 50. He said, that's just what it says. That doesn't really mean anything. That's exactly what this is.
Yeah.
And it doesn't just apply to these laws. Now it applies to every law.
And
anybody anywhere in power can say, well, I think it means this today. Look at script.
Oh, look what Hanukkah did. They had an easement across a piece of property that was an inconvenient truth because the property belonged to one of their board members. So they said, well, never mind, we'll build a road across the adjoining property instead because it suits us better.
Yeah.
That is exactly what they did.
And the adjoining property owner put up a locked gate. And they waited till she was away from home and built the damn road through anyway.
And it's going to cost the town of Hednecker $85,000, probably plus attorney's fees.
Yeah, well, as I've written a couple of times, fairly offensively, it is time. it is time to call for volunteers for donations of loam and for an armed working party to destroy the road, bulldoze the garbage to the edge of the street, and make it into a berm to keep the town out, and restore the property. And tell the world, including the eco-greenies, that you're restoring the woodlands to their formerly pristine condition. Dare them to stop us.
That's right.
But the serious point is, though, we have been the country, most and foremost in all the world and in history, that we have been ruled by the rule of law. And increasingly we see those, and what this week is all about is the destruction of that rule of law. We are regressing. We are not progressing, as the progressives keep telling us. We are regressing back to the rule of the strong man. Because if laws have no difference, then only those with the most divisions, a.k.a. army divisions, win.
Well, yeah, and this is these 2 points, the Henniker thing and then the Supreme Court decisions, play into exactly what the problem is in the third world. In order to get out of the third world, you need 2 things.
Yep.
You need property rights and rule of law. Those are the things you need. People need to know that what they've done is worth something and that they can keep it, and that there will be laws that they can understand so that they can interact with everybody else.
3 things.
Which is why...
Well, you do need those 2.
Those 2 are important, but there's one
What's
other
the third
thing you
one? Because
forgot.
we only got about 30 seconds.
A belief in absolute truth and reality. Because when you have everybody's entitled to their own reality, then this is why this crap happens.
Yeah,
and without those 3 things, you will not have a successful country.
Right, and a quick contrast is between Hong Kong and the Philippines. The Philippines had strong men and no rule of law, and they remained in abject poverty from the 50s to the 90s. They were originally richer than Hong Kong. Hong Kong, on the other hand, became amazingly wealthy with small government and low taxes.
All right, you're out of time. This is GrokTALK. We'll be right back with Ann Marie Banfield. Stay tuned.
This is a coalition of New Hampshire taxpayers. We're located at 8 North Main in Concord, New Hampshire. This is a repository for all things conservative and municipal. So if you have a problem in your town, your school, your budget committee, the right to know law, and now, at the top of our list is voter fraud. You have a tip for us, some information for us, you want to join or help us out, cnht.org.
Hi, this is Rich Gerard, host of Gerard at Large in the Morning, the Manchester area's only locally owned, locally operated, focused, and interested riveting radio show, heard live every Monday through Friday from 6 to 9 on 90.7 FM WLMW New Hampshire Family Radio, and available 24/7 live or archived at GerardAtLarge.com. Be sure to tune in.
GrokTALK.
3, 2, 1.
We'd like to welcome you to another edition of GrokTALK, brought to you by New Hampshire's leading conservative blog site, GraniteGrok.com. We are your feared extremist, right-wing, hard-charging, gun-toting, opinionated, outspoken, rabble-rousing, letter-writing, radio, microphone stomping conservatives and rational libertarians. So get ready for more news and opinion you could only get from GraniteGrok.com.
GrokTALK.
All right, this is GrokTALK. I forgot to tell you who our guests are today at the beginning of the segment because we couldn't get Rick Perry on thanks to a scheduling misunderstanding. It's the difference between the body of the text of the email and the subject line. When you change something in the body of the text and you don't make a change in the subject line, people make assumptions about the conversation, and that's what happened, and that's why we didn't have Rick Perry today. We have Ann Marie Banfield is in the studio with us. We're going to spend the next half hour talking to her. After that, we have Jim Kofalt from the 603 Alliance, and then Mark Lucas from Americans for Prosperity is going to talk to us about their road to reform. So, Ann Marie, good morning.
Good morning.
Thanks for coming in early so you could listen to the chickens and the squirrels and
learn a lot.
Yeah, you never know what's going to happen here. So we're going to talk about education, and there's way too much to talk about in 30 minutes, obviously. Right. But we did have something that happened this week.
Yes.
We can start with. The governor vetoed some legislation that would have given parents some rights with regard to objectionable material.
Right, which was HB 332.
Okay, so why don't you give us a real quick about what the bill is and then what happened and what we think we need to go with that.
This was sponsored by Victoria Sullivan, who is a freshman state rep who is just on fire for parental rights and all good things. She sits on the House Education Committee. She's from Manchester, and she's just one of those parents, I think, that got involved, that sees what's going on in her kid's school, and decided, I'm going to do something about this. She was on the PTA, a real good person, and I think that she just thought, maybe I'm going to run for a state rep, and won. Ended up on the House Education Committee, and she sponsored a bill. It's HB 332, if anybody wants to go look it up, and it basically just says that parents should have the ability to see materials ahead of time that may be objectionable, like basically sex education materials, things like that. Just so they can see them, just be transparent and decide for themselves what they want to do. She had heard from some parents that were finding this information out after the fact, after their kids have gone through classes and anybody.
Mommy, I learned about anal sex today.
Well,
what?
Yeah, not a good way to find out that your kids are learning things that maybe either you have a problem with. She brought up some good points, and I think other people brought up some good points in the hearings, which is, I just want to see the information. It's not necessarily always to say, no, I don't want my kids to learn this, but maybe it's more of a way to explain things before your child goes into the class, maybe have a discussion with them after the class. There's always this assumption that parents, don't want their kids to know this information. Sometimes parents simply want to make sure that it's age appropriate. Maybe that, I don't really think there's parents that want to keep their kids, buried in the sand, their heads buried in the sand, but maybe it's just not the right time that the school chooses.
I think we talked about this on Facebook. All children are different.
Yes.
Some children are ready for certain subjects before other children.
Yes.
And some very much many years before.
Right.
Even if you just look at the way children develop. My daughter versus her friends.
Yep.
Some of them developed into their teenage years much sooner than she did.
Right.
So they were boy crazy, and she was like, what's the big deal?
Yes.
So those things all matter. And
Right.
parents really are the only people who are going to know what they're ready for.
Right. I remember with my own daughter, who's now in college, sitting down with her and attempting to, have some of these discussions with her. And I can remember, even in 6th grade, I sat down with her to discuss a few things, and her reaction was, I could tell immediately she just wasn't ready. And, I think it's about respect. It's about respecting that child. And I came back with the information when she was in 8th grade. And even then I felt like, after we had the discussion, I kind of felt like maybe that was even a little bit too early for her. But, where's the respect for these kids who are not ready for this information? To me, that's what we're missing. And so her bill was just simply to make things transparent. Just make sure that parents understand what's going to be taught ahead of time and let them decide, let them talk to their kids if that's what they choose to do. And so Governor Hassan vetoed it on Friday. And this passed the House, this passed the Senate. And clearly the people spoke. They spoke through the representatives. And Governor Hassan, again, and this isn't the first time this legislative session that we've seen this, because she vetoed HB 6032, which allows parents the option to opt their kids out of the standardized assessment, which they can do now. But it would have been nice to put it into law for the parents who ran into administrators who were trying to tell them that they couldn't do this. But I think what we're starting to see, and I don't think you guys are going to be shocked by this, but we have a governor who really stands up against parental rights.
Well, I'm going to... Am I on, by the way?
Yeah, you certainly are.
I can't hear myself for whatever reason.
I can hear you.
God struck you deaf.
Maybe that's a sign for me.
Might not be a bad thing, really.
Yeah.
What? Oh, hand me a cheeseburger.
I think you've got the question partially right. It is about respect, but it isn't for the kids. It is for the parents.
Yes,
but it also
both,
comes
yes.
down, I tend to be a very simple person, even though I say a lot of words at times. But I try to bring things down to principles. And it's something I've been seeing, as you well know, over the years. I've got it on video. Who owns my kid?
Mm-hmm.
Is really what it comes down to.
Right.
And what you're running into with both of these, was it 583?
You didn't build that.
No,
323?
323
Right.
and 603.
Yep.
You're seeing the left showing the disdain that parents aren't necessary. We know better than the parents do for what's best for your own kids. I mean,
Right.
I've got it on video where we have taught your kids so that they know better than you do.
Yes.
Well,
Yeah,
we've got
exactly.
Virginia Berry in writing saying
Yeah.
things that basically say that the schools and the superintendents are the ones who make these decisions, not the parents.
Yeah, we hear that a lot. It's interesting, because I sit before the education committees, and so I listen to the legislators speak, and luckily we don't hear that a lot, but we do hear that from some legislators, and it's kind of shocking. And I think when parents are now coming to these these hearings and testifying, especially through the Common Core whole reform movement, you've got parents who are now up in arms across the country and in New Hampshire. They're now starting to come to these committees and testifying, and I think what's shocking to them is that that they're being dismissed. And we do have that. We have legislators who are basically saying, you don't know what's good for your children.
And that this is where I need to take folks like you gently to task. We need to know who's saying that kind of stuff. Let us put it out there. Video would be best, but if you can scribble down day, time, people saying exactly their own words, that's all we need.
Right.
What did they say in their own words?
Yep.
And
it helps. You're right.
And get that out there to show such disdain. This is really the big cultural problem. We've got all these Republicans, Doug Scammon being the foremost example I like to pick on because he made himself such a big target. oh, we have to forget all about these social issues, just concentrate on the fiscal ones. Well, as you well know, all social issues have a fiscal cost. And you're seeing it because these people in government are saying, we know better, therefore, here, that's the social issue, and we have to spend this much to take care of it. Mm-hmm. And these Republicans are wusses. They won't stand up, or they're just, we'll just spend a little more, we'll manage it a little bit better, we like being Democrat juniors. I'm no longer using Democrat light. I'm going Democrat juniors.
Because they are the inferiors in the partnership. They roll over and play dead. And
Junior!
and we can argue about the trade agreement. I think Republicans are taking their traditional position, but I think Obama is going to abuse their trust.
Well, it's a given. It really doesn't matter what they do. He's going to do what he wants.
And
anyway.
the problem is at the end of the negotiation, they are supposed to give an up or down vote. If he changes the rules and they don't like it, they're supposed to vote against it. You're laughing because you don't think they're going to.
Ann Marie's going, how'd we go from there to there?
No.
Well, that's true.
Stop segueing out of her education.
Back to education.
So what is the remedy to a governor that has vetoed these, and yet in the House we have the Democrat-appointed speaker who's nominally a Republican, a good conservative Republican if you listen to Governor Papa Smurf, because all Republicans are conservatives. How can we change this?
Well, I think parents, unfortunately, sit on the couch and a lot of times don't want to get involved and think all is fine until they see an actual assault on their rights. And so I think that in some ways these kind of measures, when she vetoes something, does wake up a lot of people. I think Common Core is waking up a lot of people when their kids are coming home and they can't even help their kids on their own homework. I think that's a lot of times how people wake up. Unfortunately, I think that they kind of check out of the system and then they become engaged when they feel either they're being attacked or something's wrong. So, in some measures, I think that we're starting to see an awakening amongst parents. And Common Core, for all the reasons I'm fighting against it, that's been the good part of it. It's awoken the sleeping giant. But what's the remedy is to find legislators who support parental rights. Find legislators who understand this. Run for office like Victoria did. I mean, she put herself out there. She was on the PTA. She saw what was going on, and she decided, you know what, I'm going to do something. And unfortunately, her bill was vetoed, but it's a good bill, and maybe we can override it. If we're trying to get parents to write and support override for 603, add this one to the list. Parents need to start writing in to their legislators and say, look, if we can get enough legislators to support this override, we can get this passed into law. But I think the remedy is to find good legislators, and if you can't find them, put your name on the ticket.
Is there? I don't know what the votes were. Is there any chance of a veto override on 332 or?
I don't recall exactly that. My guess is it probably was party line. I think it's going to be tough to get an override. But we're trying it with 603 right now, and 603 again, just to clarify, is right now they have a standardized assessment. It's a Common Core standardized assessment given in all schools. Many parents pulled their kids out of it. It's a lousy test. It's not even a good academic test. And what we found was parents who would go into the school and say, I don't want my child to take this test. I'm exercising my parental rights. That the administrators would come back and say, oh, sorry, you don't have those rights. You have to force basically your child to take this test. And so we had issues. And we even had some parents who had to hire an attorney and pay $250 for a letter to say, yes, they have these rights, and no, they don't. Their children do not have to take this test. So, and I talked to a student the other day who was going to opt herself out in Co-Brown and got pushback from the administration, ended up being basically felt pressured into taking the test. So we need it in law. There's no reason not to put it in law. Now, Governor Hassan said something about, she's concerned we might lose some federal funding.
Oh, that's always the reason.
Yes, and as a researcher, I'm sorry to awaken the parents, but it always boils down to money. To me, it doesn't always boil down to what's best for your kids. So there's this concern that if we pass something into law showing parental rights or, expressing parental rights in law, that that we're going to lose some kind of federal funding because we do have a tyrant in the White House that threatens these things.
I know the perfect answer.
Yeah.
Civil disobedience.
Yes.
And it's called Christmas trees. She's going, what?
Yeah,
Christmas
yeah.
trees. Well, we've all seen with the school lunches, all of the Twitter pics with the hashtag, thanks Michelle Obama, with
Yeah.
the execrable lunches. Well, if the students can't opt out, we need to do Common Core Christmas tree hashtag, which you just get all the kids to say Christmas tree, the tests, which means, here's my answers, Christmas tree. And and if enough people do that, the elite and the administrators are complaining that, well, we have to have so many people to do this to get the money.
Yes.
And to make it statistically valid testing.
Yep.
Well, if all the kids are Christmas treeing the tests, they're still getting the money, but the results are meaningless.
Yeah.
I mean, you have accomplished the same thing.
Yeah.
And then the kids all get to go to the parties afterwards that the administrators use our tax money to bribe the kids with.
Yep.
Bribing kids, bribing the scholastic citizens. Gosh, it's just like in miniature.
We're going to take a break.
It is.
Go ahead.
We're-
I'll let
we're-
you talk first, and then I'll cut you off.
We'll teach them to be just like good, obedient serfs, like we're trying to make the citizens. We're going to steal their money and then use it to bribe the states to oppress them.
There you go.
Yep.
That's it.
Yay. All right. Great break. Be right back. Stay tuned.
Hi, this is Rich Gerard, host of Gerard at Large in the Morning, the Manchester area's only locally owned, locally operated, focused, and interested riveting radio show, heard live every Monday through Friday from 6 to 9 on 90.7 FM WLMW New Hampshire Family Radio, and available 24/7 live or archived at GerardAtLarge.com. Be sure to tune in.
This is the Coalition of New Hampshire Taxpayers. We're located at 8 North Main in Concord, New Hampshire. This is the repository for all things conservative and municipal. So if you have a problem in your town, your school, your budget committee, the right to know law, and now, at the top of our list is voter fraud. You have a tip for us, some information for us, you want to join or help us out, cnht.org.
So we're talking about
Christmas trees.
Christmas trees, but this is what came to mind. The phone ban starts July 1st. Real quick.
Oh, yeah.
Little civil disobedience here. Not entirely, but sort of. Everybody in the state saying we are going to aggressively enforce this new ban on using these electronic devices in your car. Okay, great. Every single person who gets a ticket, take it to court. Go to court. Show up. I want to see crowds of people in courtrooms every damn day until the judges can't take it anymore. Very aggressive enforcement. You want to enforce this law? Take your ticket to the courtroom.
How did that pass with Republicans in charge of the House
Because
and
the
Senate?
Senate sucks. That's how
Because
it
they too think they know what's good for us.
Yeah.
You're talking about Bradley.
This is 2014, so.
Okay.
And this is why I'm just about ready to say adios. Because
same,
if they're supposed to be for liberty and and all that other stuff, and then they do this nanny state. I mean, we've been writing about this crap for years, and we can't even find that there used to be statistics on accidents due to cell phone usage.
Well,
They
there were statistics. There was detailed statistics at the NHTSA,
and they
whatever
took
that's
them
doing.
away.
And you can't really find them anymore. You can.
Yeah.
They're still there, but they used to have white papers and synopsises of things that cause distractions. And now it's very vague and fluffy and very difficult. And there's no hard
breakdowns.
evidence. But the New Hampshire State Senate did not use. I mean, they use pressure to prevent you from doing roll calls. They use pressure to prevent you from doing anything they don't like because they want the right bills. But they can't use any pressure on people like Stiles and what's his face that left last year to get them to vote the right way. Odell. On right. I mean, it drives me nuts. They're just as bad this year. I mean, we have some better people in there, but the whole thing in the state senate is a disaster. And as long as those people are in leadership, nothing's going to change. They're going to just rubber stamp any rhino-y bill that comes through there, and then say, "Well, we were a good budget." Blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
Right. Anyway, education.
No, they didn't, and they allowed
Education.
themselves to be attacked
Education.
over it nonstop.
Education.
Well, I think the bottom line is, I think what we're starting to see, I don't, like I said, I don't think you guys are shocked by this, but I think what other people are starting to see is that this governor is just simply anti-parental rights, and I think that's what what's being exposed about her, I think, through these vetoes, and the union leader ran an article today on this particular veto, and I was quoted in there as saying that she's the most anti-parental rights governor that we've seen in a long time, and it's interesting. The Planned Parenthood representative was quoted in this article too, and I'm thinking, why is she quoted in this article? Well, again, this has sex education. This is the materials, but again, you can see who stands for parents and who does not. And we're starting to I think understand who we have serving as governor in this state, and that is somebody who just stands in opposition to parents, and again, parents, you can let your kids learn whatever they want. I mean, you teach them whatever you want at home. Teach them, let them sit in the class. I don't care how offensive it is. But if a parent doesn't want this, why should their kids be subjected to this? Or can't we just have some transparency in what you're teaching my kids?
No, but that's the point. They don't want you to know.
Right.
Look at with the Common Core, where all the tests are computerized. So parents can't see what's on the test. They can't see what the correct answers are. And you've probably got more examples than what we've posted, but we see these absolutely execrable examples of what is the right answer.
Today's word is execrable.
Thank you.
It's a good word.
And it completely defines what these guys are doing, because they are deciding. I'm calling it is secular humanism. We are going to define what the country's religion will be without calling it a religion. It is a philosophy of life, and your parents are wrong, and we in the government schools are right.
Yeah, and I had a parent the other day who I was talking to, whose son is in Portsmouth High School, and in their health class or wellness class, whatever it was, he was required to go to the guidance counselor or somebody to get a condom. He was going to get credit for this. The class. And he's a sophomore in high school, and they get extra credit if they go to the drugstore to get a condom.
What?
Yeah, and then the class they were going to showed how to put the condom on the sex toy.
There's a slippery slope there.
Yeah. Well,
how much extra credit can I get?
How slippery does the sex toy have to be? Sorry.
And does this go against what the parents believe?
Right. Well, this parent in particular, she was, because she has such a good relationship with her child. It was actually the son that brought the information home to the parent, and she decided, they had a good relationship. She talked to him. She let him go ahead and participate. But, what about the child that maybe doesn't tell the parent? Or, this whole idea that, here's a parent who had an issue with the non-transparency part of it, but still had no problem with what was being taught. Can we just not have our schools act as if they have to keep things hidden from parents? It's almost like this, you have to discover this, you have to uncover it, you have to be this detective to figure out what's being taught, what's going on in your school where you pay the taxes, you pay their salaries, it's your child going into the school, and yet you have to become this detective and this fighter and figure these things out, whereas I think in Victoria's bill, the 332, by making this transparent, to me, it's a way of bringing the school and the parents together to come to an agreement or to work together, not make this, we're on these opposite sides, kind of fighting. Let's bring people together.
It would certainly prevent phone calls like this. Your son comes home, they have a condom in their backpack. Why do you have a condom in your backpack?
Yes.
Homework. Yeah. Wait a minute.
Yep.
You said working together.
Yeah.
The schools seem to be talking out of both sides of the
Yes.
mouth. The statistics
Absolutely.
say that kids are more successful when the parents are engaged in this.
Right.
But then, on the other hand, they don't want, the schools in a lot of cases don't want the parents engaged.
Right.
And we saw that up in Guilford several times now.
Yes.
Where you've got an engaged parent and they had him arrested.
Yeah.
In Timberline, they don't even want the school boards engaged.
Oh, that's correct.
But you know, the strange thing is, you know, once upon a time they could have said, you know, if we're going to keep the parents informed, you know, newsletters, printed stuff, it's expensive. You know, we can't afford to do that. Well, now I'm presuming they have a curriculum, they have an agenda, a timeline for what they're teaching.
They could use the condom budget
through each semester. It's got to be in a computer somewhere in the school. It would cost $0 to put that on the public website, or even a subscription website that the parents have passwords to. But no, they don't want to tell because they want to be able to do this stuff under the covers.
We want more technology, just not that kind.
Well, the whole deal, and I'm going to be crass and jaded at this point to
Excellent.
say...
That's what we're all about here.
Absolutely.
We didn't have room for crass and jaded on there, but we can add it.
Yes.
Is that jaded? Is that jaded Helm?
No.
I think, you know, Skip, I think you
case.
brought up the best point, though. It's that do you really want parents engaged? Because you seem to be saying that, but then on the other hand, you're pushing them out. And, you know, I'm going to give you an example. In Manchester a few months ago, Commissioner Barry and Tom Raffio, the chair of the school board, New Hampshire School Board, came before the Manchester School Board, the local school board in Manchester. And during the discussion, because they were discussing the test, the Common Core test, the commissioner had said something about the math, because, you know, Common Core math, it's so convoluted, parents can't even help their kids with it. And one of the school board members, John Avard, had brought up, you know, that we're seeing these math problems. And Commissioner Barry, and, you know, I don't have her exact quote, said something to the effect that, you know, parents shouldn't have to work with their kids on math or something along that line. And you know, he took offense to that, because he's thinking, wait a second, you know, this is something that we should be able to sit down with our kids and work with them. And then Robin Dunphy, who is now on the Manchester School Board, she brought that exact point up, Skip. She said, you know, on one hand, you're basically, and, you know, I'm not quoting them, I'm just summarizing them, paraphrasing. On one hand, you're saying that you want parents engaged, but then on the other hand, you're making it very clear through the standards, the curriculum, the testing, whatever, that no, we really don't want the parents. I mean, you're saying one thing, but you're doing the other. Exactly what you said.
And I think history shows that for thousands of years, it's always been the parents that have had the primary responsibility for educating their kids in everything. And it wasn't until the industrial age, when the progressive idea of, you know, school classrooms and all of that really became de rigueur. And the progressive has always been that we are only cogs in the social machine, and that we have to be managed. Right. And I think what you're seeing is the left, to put it in the broader context, have used the educational system to achieve one of their aims, which is the destruction of traditional values, that parent-child relationship, that government knows better, government is your daddy and your mommy, that you should be listening to us. And oh, by the way, in the grander political picture, as we talk about all the time, if you don't know your history, if you don't know the philosophy of the American history, then we can tell you whatever we want. I mean, you know who we are, you know what we're based on, and yet we put up posts with video after video of somebody just asking basic questions about our history, our philosophy, our Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and hardly anybody can answer.
Right.
And
Scary.
this, I think, is, again, one of those fundamental transformations, because if you don't know where you've been, we can get you to go anywhere.
Right. Right. And, you know, there was another bill this year. It was HB 206 or 207. Now I'm forgetting which one.
Whatever.
Ralph Boehm, he sits in the House Education Committee. He had introduced a bill that would require parental opt-in to any surveys given to students. Unfortunately, Terry Wolf, who is a representative out of Bedford, didn't want an opt-in. She wanted an opt-out. and so had opposed the bill in committee.
You got about 20 seconds.
Okay. So, but again, we're trying. These invasive surveys that are out there trying to gather information. Do you have a gun in the home? What is your sexual orientation? I mean, invasive surveys like that too. They're in the schools. I mean, and how about just letting parents see these? Parents can't see them. There's just so many issues that I think what you basically said highlights it. Do you really want parental involvement or don't you? And I think this governor is saying no. We do not respect parental rights in the state.
All right, we got to go. Thank you so much for coming in to talk to us.
Yeah,
Appreciate having you. We're going to have to have you in more often, even if it's by phone. But this is GrokTALK. We'll be right back with Mike Kofalt. Stay tuned. Jim Kofalt.
Gerard,
Jim
host of Dread at Large
not
in
Mike.
the morning. The Manchester area's only locally owned, locally operated, focused, and interested riveting radio show, heard live every Monday through Friday from 6 to 9 on 90.7 FM WLMW New Hampshire Family Radio, and available 24/7 live or archived at GerardAtLarge.com. Be sure to tune in.
This is the Coalition of New Hampshire Taxpayers. We're located at 8 North Main in Concord, New Hampshire. This is the repository for all things conservative and municipal. So if you have a problem in your town, your school, your budget committee, the right to know law, and now at the top of our list is voter fraud. You have a tip for us, some information for us, you want to join or help us out, cnht.org.
GrokTALK.
3, 2, 1.
We'd like to welcome you to another edition of GrokTALK, brought to you by New Hampshire's leading conservative blog site, GraniteGrok.com. We are your feared extremist, right-wing, hard-charging, gun-toting, opinionated, outspoken, rabble-rousing, letter-writing, radio microphone stomping conservatives and rational libertarians. So get ready for more news and opinion you could only get from GraniteGrok.com.
GrokTALK.
All right, coming to you from Concord, New Hampshire. You're talking. We're talking. Shh. Coming to you from Concord, New Hampshire. Thank you to the Coalition of New Hampshire Taxpayers for allowing us to use the space in their offices to do this program. Of course, this is brought to you by GraniteGrok.com, New Hampshire's leading conservative blog site. All right, that's not what it says on the sign, is it? Oh, yes,
It should be.
It should be. Conservative. All right, anyway, I got that screwed up. So please follow us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, read our stuff, blah, blah, blah. Turning microphones on so Mike can talk. Go ahead, you can talk now.
Oh, thank you.
So
I feel honored.
Well,
being
so
allowed
you walked in
being
and you were
allowed
talking during my introduction. It's very...
I'm like the Shining.
back. All right, we are expecting Jim Kofalt shortly.
He's just taking a quick restroom break on his way in here.
Oh, good luck. I hope it's in that restroom because
Does
this
he
one
need a
has no light.
flashlight?
Yeah.
I have a flashlight.
We all have smartphones.
He's got a smartphone now. Yes. All right, the bulb blew. I called Ed and told him, so he knows.
I bet he's got supplies somewhere.
He does. I went looking. We couldn't find any light bulbs. There could be some in his
Yes.
someplace. Yeah. So anyway, hop on the headset there right in
We're
front of
such
you.
a high-budget operation.
Here we are. No, we're
Light
not in
bulbs.
charge of the light bulbs. So good morning. How are you, sir?
Well, welcome,
Do
Jim
I-
Kofalt,
I think I
conservative
have I
activist, Tea
think I have
Party
the wrong
guy,
headphone.
and one of the founding members of the 603 Alliance and Conservative Business League.
I'm not sure which headphone you're in. Talk. Say hello.
Hello.
You got him.
Say it again.
Hello again.
Okay, here we go. The headphones are all... They were ordered at one point, and then we kind of have so many that they kind of get moved
Mine
around.
is always this one.
I know which ones ours are. So anyway, welcome to the show. It's very informal, if you hadn't noticed. We talk about light bulbs and bathrooms and constitutions and
Condoms.
and caucuses, and we were talking about condoms in the last segment. Yeah,
We're on the C words now.
we're on the C word. So 603 Alliance. Brief statement about what it is, and of course we can talk about the CBL if you want as well.
Sure.
Just so people understand, because there's some misconceptions about what the purpose of the group is.
Absolutely. So, yeah, I actually was just talking to a group of volunteers, and I asked people, what do you think the 603 Alliance is? And somebody gave me a really good answer, which was the 603 Alliance is about consolidating voters who believe in the Constitution and smaller government.
That's an excellent answer.
I thought it was a perfect answer. The 603 Alliance started late last year, I guess, were some of the first meetings. And it was a group of conservative activists and leaders of some grassroots groups getting together and just deciding that we needed to try to affect political change, and particularly trying to focus on the principles of the Constitution. So, there are people who are, there's a wide range of people who believe in smaller government, from liberty activists, free staters, all the way to more traditional Reagan conservatives who have strong opinions about social issues and so on. But as Ronald Reagan said, there's this kind of 80% principle. If we agree on 80% of things, we ought to be working together. And the 603 Alliance is about trying to get those folks together and operate somewhat as a group to say, look, there are going to be things that we don't agree on, but we agree that the federal government should be out of education. We agree that the NSA shouldn't be spying on us. We agree on the right to bear arms, that the Second Amendment's pretty clear about what it says.
And welcome to the state's safest podcast, by the way.
I don't know what that means, but...
We're all armed.
Oh, I got it.
Yeah,
right.
Basically put...
Click, click, click. Okay.
No, you
Gears
don't want to hear
there.
click, click, click. You want to hear bang, bang, bang.
No. Yeah, I mean, there's all these things that we can agree on, and yet somehow we manage to be pretty fractured when it comes around to election time. Mm-hmm. So if we look back at the November elections, which was when I think a lot of these conversations started, there were a lot of people who were frustrated with the choices that we had, especially in the statewide election for governor and in the U.S. Senate race. Those of us who believe strongly in the Second Amendment, I think, were really concerned about Scott Brown.
You think?
I might have read something on the Grok about that once or twice.
A day.
So, I think, the Republican Party is saying, we should be having those debates during the primary process. And I think that's very true. We should be having those debates during the primary process. The problem is that we end up very fractured because we have maybe one candidate who's very libertarian, we have one candidate who's more traditional conservative, and then we have the mainstream candidate. In the case of the presidential primary, we've got one or two or three.
Baskin Robbins. It's the Baskin Robbins primary.
We've got one or two or three that are maybe on the, we'll be nice and call them the moderate Republican end of the spectrum.
The squishes.
And
I can say it.
I fully expect that all but one of those will probably drop out early. That some of them are probably running not so much to win, but to divert attention and, to steer the electorate towards that chosen moderate candidate. And then we have this wide range of people on the conservative and libertarian end of the spectrum, and it doesn't take a majority to win the New Hampshire primary. You can do it with a fairly small plurality. So what the 603 Alliance is doing, and what we plan for October, is a caucus, an Iowa-style caucus, to be held in New Hampshire, open to registered New Hampshire voters who are either a registered Republican or undeclared. And the way that kind of caucus works is that you have groups who go stand with their candidate's group. That's your way of voting at the caucus. You go stand in a group, and then the groups are counted. At the end of that process, the two groups that have the smallest number of people are dissolved. They can go join other groups. There can be some speeches and politicking in between, but ultimately you repeat the process with a smaller number of candidates. Again, you drop the bottom two vote takers until you end up at the end with just two, and of those two, one is going to be the winner because they have more people standing in their group. The nice thing about this runoff process, this caucus, is that it allows people to, if their first choice isn't selected, they have an opportunity to pick their second choice and potentially their third choice.
It
and
allows
so on.
them to make those mental trade-offs and judge for themselves, does this person meet 80% of my criteria for a candidate? And I'm going to assume that out of the conservative half of the spectrum, more than half of the candidates will come to that 80% mark for most people. And so what this gives you, as I think was said in one of our meetings, is this gives you the opportunity to, first of all, self-select a candidate that's pretty close to your views, and secondly, and decide that person's acceptable, and secondly, to end up voting in the primary for somebody who is your first or second or maybe, worst case, third choice pick for somebody who's an acceptable conservative, as opposed to having the establishment run the table because the conservatives are all split, and you end up with the choice in the general election of only the Democrat or your last place choice for an acceptable conservative.
So to get from where you were to where you just said, at the end of the caucus process, you will have everybody there, and you will have a chosen caucus winner. Now, what's the next step? Because we know where we go when the primary comes, but we've just, as a group of people, however many, 100, 1,000, 10,000, whoever shows up, decided as a group that this is the caucus winner.
Right.
Now what happens?
Right. So what happens going into the caucus is that we are asking people, as you participate in this, we are asking you to come out of this and support the winner. So we're doing this in mid-October. So we have between then and early next year, when the primary takes place, a lot going on in New Hampshire around that time, and a lot of people getting involved with their candidate or with promoting a candidate. We're asking people to commit as you go into the caucus. We're asking you to commit that coming out of the caucus, you're going to be working in whatever you would be doing to influence the primary. We're asking you to stand for that candidate going forward. Now,
and to spread the word.
That's a tall order because, really I think a lot of people hear about this and they say, well, this is a great idea until their candidate doesn't win. Mm-hmm. And then maybe not so much. But here's what I would say about that. The critical thing is, if we don't stand together, then the old playbook that is pretty well known at this point will play out again. We will have a sort of progressive Republican nominee, and Karl Rove knows that. Everybody pretty much in the Republican establishment knows that.
They're counting on us being divided, which is why we're going to put a lot of effort into getting people to come together, and it's why it's a caucus, because we want the people to come together, not for us to tell them this is the best candidate.
Right. I mean, it's the way I would put it is that we don't really the establishment doesn't really need to play divide and conquer with us because we're already doing it to ourselves. Mm-hmm. So, my question to people who are considering coming to the caucus, and we're trying to get 1,000 people there. So I think we're pretty ambitious, but I think we can do it. But my question to them is, if you go in and your candidate doesn't win, would you rather have your second choice as the presidential nominee, or would you have your last choice or your second to the last choice as the presidential nominee or as president? And I think most people would say, that's a no-brainer. I'll take my second choice. We believe that if people don't get unified and start thinking that way, then we're going to end up with another Clinton-Bush race in 2016. And, if people felt disenfranchised in the last election with Scott Brown and Walt Havenstein running, I think it's going to be that times 100.
Gee, and I thought we did pretty well in that race.
Well, obviously, it would have worked out better if we had managed the primary effectively in this particular manner.
Right.
But just so people know, everybody at this table is or has been on the steering committee for the 603 Alliance. I can also tell you that I've spoken to several people in the group, and not everybody is in agreement on who their first or second candidate is. Relatively close.
No,
close.
we're
but
all
nobody's nobody's agreed to anything. I mean, we may all walk into the caucus and go in 8 or 9 different directions.
Right.
This is very likely to happen. So, any presumption that we all agree on who that first person is crazy, because we don't.
we absolutely don't.
And the other thing is that we've also all agreed that even if it's not our first candidate, we will abide by the decision at the caucus, which is important because if we expect you to do that, we have to lead by example. And
Absolutely.
That's really what we want to do.
Now, it's come to my understanding that the establishment GOP has given the 603 Alliance no small bit of grief because this is a primary state, not a caucus state. What are you doing? This is not how things are supposed to work. To which I go, yeah, stick it to them. But, what are the other things that you're hearing from the people who believe this is a really bad idea, mostly because it goes after their moderate or, as I call them, a squishy candidate?
We're actually going to take a break. You can answer that question after, and then we can talk about the CBL, because I want to talk about that too, so people know about that, because they're different.
Hi, this is Rich Gerard, host of Gerard at Large in the Morning, the Manchester area's only locally owned, locally operated, focused, and interested riveting radio show, heard live every Monday through Friday from 6 to 9 on 90.7 FM WLMW New Hampshire Family Radio, and available 24/7 live or archived at GerardAtLarge.com. Be sure to tune in.
This is a coalition of New Hampshire taxpayers. We're located at 8 North Main in Concord, New Hampshire. This is a repository for all things conservative and municipal. So if you have a problem in your town, your school, your budget committee, the right to know law, and now, at the top of our list is voter fraud. You have a tip for us, some information for us, you want to join or help us out, cnht.org.
All right, welcome back. We are here with Jim Kofalt from the 603 Alliance. And Skip asked you a question before we went on the break, and I guess we should answer that.
So, yeah, I mean, there was a concern, or you raised the idea that, we're a primary state. Why would you have a caucus? I would say, look, the Iowa straw poll has been around for years and years. Now, I think that's going away, and I think a lot of the reason it's going away is because it was relatively easy to game the system. If you had enough money to buy tickets for a bunch of people, you could bring in busloads of people to vote in the straw poll.
Oh, that's important because we need
manipulate
to talk about
it.
That too. Yeah.
What we're going to be doing is holding a caucus, and one of the great things about the caucus process is it's a runoff, and you can't really game the system with that. You could bring people in, but you'd have to bring in more people to vote for your candidate than all other groups combined. So it's a very high bar. Now, if you do that, if you start bussing people in to try to win it, but you don't get more than all other groups combined, then what you've done is you have validated that the caucus is important and that it matters, but lost. So, it's a very risky maneuver if somebody like a Jeb Bush or any of the candidates really would come in and try to manipulate the results of the caucus. It's a risky maneuver for them.
And if you see 20 buses coming up and you kind of watch these people and they're all voting for Jeb Bush, because I'm assuming that anybody who is a candidate will be on that, go over there or what have you. You're going to be able to do that.
Right.
And if they do game the system, how do you come out of that? Or are you vetting the candidates that say, here are our minimum requirements? If you are for certain things or against certain things, no, you're not on the list.
We believe that the caucus process has to be an open process, open to any of the candidates. So that pretty much means that if you're on the ballot or going to be on the ballot, you are eligible. People can vote for you. We believe that there's enough safeguard in, as I was talking about, sort of the process of how would you game the system, or what would you have to do to game the system. We believe that that's a sufficient safeguard that somebody's not going to come in and steal it. and I think they'd have to. I think it would be pretty apparent that they're stealing it if they do that. So, I think we don't see it as a major risk in the process. We do look at candidates, and Steve, I know you were asking about the CBL, which is the Conservative Business League. The CBL is a separate organization, very closely affiliated with the 603 Alliance, and it serves as a fundraising arm for the 603 Alliance because we will need funds to put on an event like this. And it also provides some opportunity to get candidates in front of voters, sometimes outside of the usual Republican chicken dinner kind of scenario. So the Conservative Business League is, as I said, a fundraising arm, but they're also working with candidates. They won't work with any candidate. So you talked about sort of vetting candidates or evaluating their position on issues. And we have a sort of scoring system that is based, it almost reads like the Bill of Rights. You can kind of go down and identify these various issues, and we're looking for where candidates stand on those issues. So we're looking at statements that they've made, official position statements, but also candidates make dumb comments sometimes in an interview, and if they say something about their position on gun control, that they're very strong on the Second Amendment, and then there's some exception, well, then their score will suffer as a result. So we look at Second Amendment, we look at free speech, we look at religious liberty, we look at a lot of these issues to identify whether candidates are really constitutionally minded, small government oriented or not. Now, having said that, we're not counting people in so much as we are ruling people out. So if somebody comes along and they've really they look good from a constitutional perspective, they may say or do something somewhere along the way that flips a switch and suddenly they're no longer on the list. But essentially what the Conservative Business League is doing is saying, we'll hold events for candidates, we'll try to get them in front of voters and give them an opportunity to meet the voters and vice versa, but we're not going to do that for candidates that are blatantly opposed to the Second Amendment or blatantly opposed to religious liberty
or
or
support Common Core
or support Obamacare, etc. So that's what the Conservative Business League is doing.
And there's an important thing about the Conservative Business League that people who might want to donate to it need to know, and that it's an LLC, correct?
That's correct. So
and the advantage is
they don't have to report who their donors are. So there's obviously the usual filings that an LLC would have to do with the Secretary of State and with the Department of Revenue, but they don't have to report a list of donors. So the businesses can become members of the CBL, individuals can become members of the CBL, and all of that's very important because it helps us to achieve our mission. It helps us to pay for the costs of putting on this caucus. There will not be a charge for attending the caucus, so anybody can come and vote, provided that they're a registered voter, either registered Republican or undeclared, in New Hampshire. So if they are, they can participate. There's no cost for that, but there's going to be a high cost to us for putting it on, which is why we need the CBL. We need funds coming in, and that's why I would really urge people, if you're interested in this, go check out our website, which is 603alliance.org. There's a donate button there that'll take you over to either join the CBL or to make a contribution to the 603 Alliance.
Right, and there was one other requirement or prerequisite for attending or participating in the caucus, as I seem to recall. So have to be registered, have to either be a Republican or be a unregistered voter. But wasn't there a cutoff? Undeclared. Wasn't there a cutoff for prior Democrats? If you had voted Democrat within the past? We
have to establish the exact rules, but we are looking at
In other words, if you change your registration yesterday from Democrat to undeclared to run Operation Reverse Chaos on us, you might be ruled out. But if you are a genuine undeclared and have been for some time, we welcome you.
Right. So we're finalizing the rules of the caucus. We're finalizing the location, and we'll be announcing the name, the location, and the rules in the near future.
Exactly. And again, we want all the candidates or representatives thereof to participate in the caucus. In the unlikely event that one of those more progressive candidates wins, well, then I guess that really means that they are considered to be the most electable by the most people, but I would be really surprised. But we're not going to rule them out. They have to, we have to, at least at the caucus, everybody has a chance to participate with the CBL in us putting on events for you. We're not going to do that for people that fall so far below our criteria.
We did talk about
exactly.
the scheme of how that's figured out. So.
Exactly.
Yeah. The other thing you use that word electability, and that's another thing that I want to talk about in this process, because I think that what the establishment generally talks about when they see somebody who, let's say, who they don't like, is they often bring up this question about electability. And I think that's one of the areas where this caucus can really help. Our goal is to shift 25,000 votes to the candidate who wins the caucus. And the establishment often talks about electability. So, in Texas, in the Senate race, Ted Cruz was unelectable. I often now am hearing that Rand Paul is unelectable. Ronald Reagan, by the way, was unelectable. So it's one of these cheap shot attacks that is often completely untrue.
Absolutely. And by the way, looking at the history, and the same, give or take the fact that history and names change, but basically the same set of people said that Goldwater was unelectable and made sure it was so, and they tried to do that to Reagan, but they didn't succeed, which made him a very successful president because he managed to get through that ring of fire and beat the Democrat handily. Ted Cruz won brilliantly in Texas. Rand Paul won his seat handily in Kentucky. Don't know if he can do it nationwide, but he was no slouch. And I think once you get these people into the visibility and in front of the public can and will fall behind them because they perceive the value. Go. Sorry.
Oh no, I'm just telling you we have 2 minutes. And if Jim has any closing remarks, I want to make sure you can get them in.
Yeah.
Where to find us?
Oh yeah.
You can find us online at 603alliance.org. Again, 603alliance.org. Or you can give us a call at 603-369-4068. You can also email us at info@603alliance.org.
Right.
And we're on Facebook and Twitter.
Right. Indeed we are.
That. So, ladies and gentlemen in the listening audience, get involved. Everybody's like, it doesn't make any difference. I always vote for those rhinos and all that nonsense. But you have an opportunity to really begin to engage in a process.
Yeah, I think that's the key with a lot of the people that we want to get to the caucus, is people are feeling disenfranchised. I ran for state rep last time around. I knocked on a lot of doors, and it's one of the things I heard over and over again is it doesn't matter. I'm sick and tired. I'm not voting. And we believe that this is a great opportunity for those people to get back involved in the political process and say your vote does matter. We can win this. Do get involved. It's the future of our country.
Don't skip.
This gives people the ability to fulfill one of my memes, which is winning is just a precursor. It's what you do afterwards that is really important. The establishment only concentrates on the winning part of it. Here's your chance through the 603 Alliance to say and to tell people, yes, we do believe what you do afterwards is most important to us.
Right. And I'm going to echo the gentleman from Atlanta who ran last time. Stay informed. Stay involved. Stay inspired. We hope to inspire you.
We hope so. So, Jim, thank you very much for taking time to be with us. I'll see you in about an hour or so, a little bit less, down the hall at the training session that's going on right now. I am Steve McDonald here with Skip Murphy, Mike Rogers, Jim Kofalt. Thanks a lot. Coming up next is Mark Lucas, a regional director for Americans for Prosperity. We're going to talk about Road to Reform. We will be right back. Please stay tuned.
New Hampshire is famous for scenic drives, but they're tough to enjoy when you're on your way to the doctor. Because Obamacare limits your choices, some will have to drive more than an hour to see a doctor. What's health insurance worth if care isn't there when you need it? Jean Shaheen voted for Obamacare, putting your doctors and hospitals further out of reach. Tell Senator Shaheen Obamacare is not working for New Hampshire.
Jean Shaheen and her allies are making false claims about her record on veterans. The truth? Shaheen refused to meet with veterans pushing for reform. She wasn't on the committee that wrote the reform legislation and refused to co-sponsor important VA reforms in the VA Management Accountability Act until after the VA scandal broke. When our veterans needed her, Jean Shaheen was AWOL. Tell Jean Shaheen to stop distorting the truth and fix the VA.
Hi, this is Rich Gerard, host of Gerard at Large in the Morning, the Manchester area's only locally owned, locally operated, focused, and interested riveting radio show, heard live every Monday through Friday from 6 to 9 on 90.7 FM WLMW New Hampshire Family Radio, and available 24/7 live or archived at GerardAtLarge.com. Be sure to tune in.
This is a coalition of New Hampshire taxpayers. We're located at 8 North Main in Concord, New Hampshire. This is a repository for all things conservative and municipal. So if you have a problem in your town, your school, your budget committee, the right to know law, and now the top of our list is voter fraud. If you have a tip for us, some information for us, you want to join or help us out, cnht.org.
Talk.
3, 2, 1.
We'd like to welcome you to another edition of GrokTALK, brought to you by New Hampshire's leading conservative blog site, GraniteGrok.com. We are your feared extremist, right-wing, hard-charging, gun-toting, opinionated, outspoken, rabble-rousing, letter-writing, radio, microphone stomping conservatives and rational libertarians. So get ready for more news and opinion you could only get from GraniteGrok.com.
Rock Talk.
All right, we are GrokTALK. Welcome back from lovely Concord, New Hampshire, where it is lovely, but we're expecting buckets and buckets of rain later. I am Steve McDonald here with Skip Murphy. Skip Murphy. I'm here with Skip Murphy. Thanks again to Jim Kofalt, of course, for coming in to talk to us about the 603 Alliance, and Ann Marie Banfield for our education discussion. Quick shout out to the Rick Perry camp. Apologize for getting the schedule wrong. And we'll work that out for a future program. But our next guest is on the line. I saw him Thursday talking to Senator Marco Rubio at a Road to Reform event. AFP, Americans for Prosperity Regional Director Mark Lucas, welcome to the show, sir.
Good morning, guys. Thanks for having me.
Sure, great to have you. So I saw the event Thursday. We recorded it and posted it online. And it was a great event. Was that the first one, or have you guys been doing these for a while?
This is our second one. The first one that we did was actually with Marco Rubio in Washington, D.C., along the same talking points with XM Bank, just because that's been such a prominent issue. And we're going to continue to do these all across the country with a host of candidates. So last Thursday was the first one in the States outside of the Beltway, and it's great to be back in Manchester, New Hampshire, with real voters that are facing real issues.
Well, this is Skip, and I want to say thank you for doing that kind of stuff, and thanks for coming on the show. I do have to also thank you once again. Both Steve and I have been blessed by AFP. Steve was selected as a Blogger of the Year back a couple of Decembers ago, and you folks gave me the annual award for Activist of the Year in New Media back in 2011. And
yeah, and thank you, because what you guys are doing, online, on Twitter, on Facebook, your activism, that's so important. We need more and more people to be engaged, not just at the doors and on the phones, but you guys have been able to use new media in a way that has really been able to spread our free market message. So you guys have been great partners, and I'm watching you right now from my home in Iowa on the Ustream.
Oh, very good. See, this is the whole great thing. You can have a TV studio and a laptop. But when you come back with another candidate back to the state, please let us know, and we will try to be there and do the same thing that Steve did, and maybe we can do the live streaming. I've been kind of out of action for a while, and there's a whole lot of equipment still to schlep around. But getting back to why you're here.
Okay, so you covered most of the critical issues. We'll start with the Export-Import Bank for people who didn't see it. And we've had other AFP folk on to talk about this, but where do you think we are? Do you think they're actually going to let it expire?
I think it's going to expire, but I think it might be short-lived, that they're going to try to bring this back and resurrect it by possibly attaching it to an appropriations bill, or even worse, trying to attach it to a defense spending bill. And that just illustrates the problem with Washington, D.C. This thing can't survive an up and down vote, so they're going to try to use some legislative trickery to attach it to something that's got nothing to do with the Export-Import Bank. So it's supposed to expire on June 30th, unless there's some type of Hail Mary that becomes a completion. I'd be surprised. But we've seen weirder things happen. And surprisingly, we've seen weirder things happen in what's supposed to be a conservative Congress. These guys made us a lot of promises in 2014 about how they're going to bring conservatism to the United States Senate, and unfortunately we're seeing the same type of cronyism that's existed for decades, regardless of party.
Yeah, unfortunately they seem to operate under the same, under the meme that former Governor John Sununu, who we happen to call Papa Smurf here in New Hampshire, has basically said, well, all Republicans are conservative, which pains us to no small amount.
No, absolutely, and that's one of the things I love about Americans for Prosperity. I came on board in January 2012, and they told me that this was a nonpartisan organization that's going to hold people accountable, regardless if you're a Republican or a Democrat, and we're truly doing that. And in my home state of Iowa, we're holding Senator Joni Ernst and Senator Charles Grassley accountable. They're two conservative Republicans who are making a bad choice in the Export-Import Bank. You might have remembered Congressman Tom Latham, another conservative from central Iowa who supported the sequester. I told his folks, I'm going on WHO radio this evening. Let me know where you stand. He stood in the wrong, in the wrong direction of the sequester. So that's one thing I love about AFP is we get beyond political parties. We get beyond political personalities. We might like you 90% of the time, but if you're wrong, we're going to let you know it, and we're going to let our activists know it.
You're just like us. Thanks for following us.
Absolutely. I'm starting to see that trend more and more. And, I'm from Iowa, another early state like New Hampshire, and we're both, fiercely independent states that really value our role in presidential politics. But when I travel the state of Iowa, I've been up to New Hampshire a few times, in South Carolina, I'm really starting to see people that they think the party has left them, and they see that the party isn't what they've promised themselves to be. And especially in the light of 2014, we're hoping to have a very aggressive conservative agenda, and they've let us down with this Export-Import Bank, and they're going to let us down probably on a host of other issues. And you might have seen that the Speaker of the House yesterday got his first invite on Air Force One. I'm so happy for Congressman Boehner. They just continually bend over for this president.
No, and trust me, there is anger that I see as we traverse the blogosphere and here in New Hampshire, that all the magnificent, splendiferous words that we heard, and yet the Republicans. My other word of the day, other than execrable, is wusses, and we're seeing the D.C. Republicans being absolute wusses in that there's nothing there to back up their campaign words. They started to talk about the power of the purse, and they immediately, McConnell and Boehner, cut that off at the pass. And all we can do is call these yahoos Democrat lights. Now, with all that said, we are all registered Republicans, with the exception of one independent and one Democrat here for the folks that write for me at Granite Rock. A number of us have been state committee members, actual members of the NHGOP, duly elected as such. But I'll tell you, I am on the cusp of saying, I'm going to go unenroll because I can't belong to a party that no longer is willing to fight for the values that its own principles say that they fight for. And we see this over and over again. And I think you're probably, as you're going around the state, around the country as AFP, you're probably hearing the same thing. And is the Republican Party going to become the latest Whig party?
Absolutely. And, there was so much hope after the election of 2014. I mean, when you look at the talking points, they're talking about repealing Obamacare. They're talking about really taking a hard look at spending and entitlement reform. I mean, they were using the talking points of the grassroots, and it really encouraged us to go out and work. It encouraged my AFP activists. At the time, I was the Iowa State Director. Really encouraged our people to knock doors. I also oversaw Louisiana and Wisconsin. We just saw all this energy and all this excitement. And on election night, it was such a beautiful night to see the joy in our activists because they were able to see how much of a difference they made. And then these guys go back to Washington, and they think that we're not paying attention. And I think the status of the grassroots now is we're going to pay attention to you 365 days of the year. I think a lot of those folks, like Senator Marco Rubio mentioned last Thursday, that they notice that we're paying attention. They're seeing our phone calls. They're reading our letters and our emails. And the smart ones, like in the United States Senate, like Marco Rubio and Ted Cruz and Rand Paul, they're paying attention. We need to make sure that a whole lot of the others pay attention because for us, grassroots, we don't just want to participate in election year. We want to participate every single day of every single year because we care about this country. I think the more and more that AFP can activate these folks, the 603 Alliance, what you guys are doing, we need to keep these grassroots folks engaged, keep them informed, and let them know how we can hold these people accountable in Washington.
Mark, and part of the Road to Reform event includes some video about exactly that thing. One of the opening videos explains, it shows activists and how they're being utilized in engaging the people. And so, Skip said, a lot of people were upset, obviously with the way things have gone. Are you seeing this as a way to get more people involved, or has there been any waning of interest in supporting this 365 24/7 strategy?
We're seeing more and more, interest because we're able to engage our people, and we do it in different ways. So obviously, you're knocking doors and making phone calls. Typically in election cycles, we're trying to keep that engagement up. We're able to see that with Greg Moore up in your state of New Hampshire, the state director, engaged people in two special election victories for the free market candidate, which was crucial, in the face of Hillary's people and the labor unions that are going door to door. So we're able to engage them on local fights all around the calendar year. In the state of Texas, we're able to engage in the mayoral election down in San Antonio this spring, where the Moore free market candidate was able to be elected and also be able to defeat a costly multi-billion-dollar streetcar project. So we're keeping them engaged, and also we want to take them to the legislative, district offices so they can meet with their congressmen back in the district. And those district office visits have been very successful. So the legislator and their staff are able to see that, AFP activists, conservative activists are engaged on XM. We did that during the sequester fight. So we're able to do different things all around the calendar year to keep people engaged, which to me is really exciting. Because I grew up in Iowa. I'm still living here in Iowa. Just like New Hampshire, we're a very engaged population when it comes to politics. But typically you would see these campaigns just to start to engage people when they needed them. We need to engage activists when they want to have their voices heard, and that's all year round. And that's why I'm so proud to be a part of AFP. And you had mentioned that video. So proud of our activists are just normal, everyday, hardworking Americans that want to fight for the future of their country.
And that's one of the things that I have enjoyed being associated with AFP the last few years is that it is nonpartisan, but certainly from a right-of-center free market environment. And how do you work on these recalcitrant congressmen and senators in trying to let them know that being pro-business is not the same thing as being pro-free market? And have you found that just smooth, gentle words are effective, or do you have to come down on them like a ton of bricks?
I like both techniques. I'd much rather use the first one if we can talk to them, in an easygoing manner, explain to them the issue about the Export-Import Bank, for instance, and bring them on our side. That's great. But sometimes you've got to hold their feet to the fire to make them see the light. And we had to do that on the sequester. I mean, we really had to take some shots at people. And I agree with you. Being pro-business is not being pro-free market. And I grew up as a young Republican. I voted for President George W. Bush in my first election, and I saw his first two terms, and we're seeing it with Barack Obama too. That it seems that regardless of party, they've been in bed with big business, and being in bed with big business is not free market. The Export-Import Bank picks winners and losers, and we're starting to see that. This Export-Import Bank's been around since FDR. It flew under the radar. I think, back in the 90s, you had a lot of our activists would have said, you know what, this is pro-business, this is pro-America. But as we've gotten further along in the 2000s, we've seen big bank bailouts. We're seeing the Export-Import Bank. We're seeing a government that's catering to the big and the powerful multinational corporations. And we're seeing Wall Street do very successful, but we're not seeing it on Main Street. Normal, everyday people aren't seeing the benefits of what government's doing. And big government has offered us big promises, but they've offered the American people big disappointment.
Mark, stay on the line. We're going to take a quick break. We will be right back.
This is Rich Gerard, host of Gerard at Large in the Morning, the Manchester area's only locally owned, locally operated, focused, and interested riveting radio show, heard live every Monday through Friday from 6 to 9 on 90.7 FM WLMW, New Hampshire Family Radio, and available 24/7 live or archived at GerardAtLarge.com. Be sure to tune in.
This is a coalition of New Hampshire taxpayers. We're located at 8 North Main in Concord, New Hampshire. This is the repository for all things conservative and municipal. So if you have a problem in your town, your school, your budget committee, the right to know law, and now at the top of our list is voter fraud. You have a tip for us, some information for us, you want to join or help us out, cnht.org.
Oh, feel the power.
Oh, I can feel it.
Our moment of triumph approaches. It's
Grok Talk.
It is Grok Talk. Steve McDonald here with Skip Murphy, our guest on the phone.
I thought my name was Skirp.
Skirp Murphy. Skirpy Murphy.
Now let's go back to Skip.
Regional Director for Americans for Prosperity. Mark Lucas, we're talking about Ex-Im Bank, activism, grassroots, and the road to reform. So do you guys have like a plan of a number of these events you want to do, or are you just kind of doing them as you go along?
We're taking targets of opportunity right now, and we've got one that we're going to announce here soon, which is going to be back in Manchester next month. Hoping to make that announcement next week, and then obviously go to Iowa and South Carolina and Florida and Nevada, go to those early states where we can really make a big media impact. Because the goal of this event is not to promote a candidate, because we're not going to make any endorsements. The point of this tour, the Road to Reform, is to really promote free market economic policies that are going to benefit families and business, and that's the big thing, is to get our policy agenda into the news cycle. Because you see that the mainstream media, they're more excited in the horse race, they're more excited in what Jeb Bush has for lunch or for dinner, and more interested in if Hillary Clinton stopped at a restaurant with her glasses on. I mean, all this inside stuff that nobody cares about. We're more focused on how can we talk about policy that affect people. because personalities and political parties will let people down, but we need to focus on these policies that really make a change.
Isn't that kind of hard, though, in our celebrity culture, where more people know what's going on with the Kardashians than what they do their knowledge of the Constitution? I mean, everything points to pop culture, and yes, I do believe what Andrew Breitbart said is still correct, that politics is downstream of culture, but it seems like there's a dam in most people's minds that separates that downstreaming from the culture to the politics, and they don't understand anymore that the politics can affect the culture in ways they're not even aware of. Just look at the decisions that were made in the last couple of weeks at the Supreme Court. These are huge, decisions that are materially going to affect a lot of people's lives.
No, I agree with you. It's tough to cut through the clutter, especially when it's this early in the cycle. When it's this early, when you're looking at June and the Iowa caucuses until next January or early February. So it is difficult. You got to find different ways to kind of utilize messaging that works with people. Americans for Prosperity, we put together some really good ads, online. We do social media engagement. And the messaging isn't your typical in-your-face, President Barack Obama's bad for America. This last web ad that we did following the Burwell-King decision was just two people holding hands, as they're in a medical room. And you hear all the buzz from the mainstream media about the politics of healthcare. And at the end, we talk about how healthcare is about people, not politics. It's a really hard-hitting video ad or web ad that we've done. You can see it at americansforprosperity.org/Burwell. But we try to take those messages like we did in 2014, where we had a normal person just in front of a white screen and talking about how Obamacare is not working. And it really grabs people's attention. So I think you got to look at ways that definitely cut through the clutter, and people will pick up a typical political mail piece and throw it away. Or they'll look at a typical political, web ad or TV ad and just tune out. We've got to look at ways that really cut through the clutter to really impact people.
Certainly that series of ads that you did made the Democrats' head explode here in New Hampshire in no small amount and ways. I mean, it took over some of the political bandwidth for quite some time, because you had activists who were tied to the Republican Party and just regular activists, and they hated it. They absolutely hated it. Congratulations.
Thank you.
All right, so Ex-Im Bank is important. Healthcare, I guess we should talk about healthcare. It doesn't appear that this particular Congress at this time is interested in doing anything meaningful as far as reforming healthcare. And have you heard anything different?
No, you hear the same old talking points that we need to repeal Obamacare. And I think the conservative movement really needs to be able to do some things in the short term to help patients. And you're kind of at a crossroads here where you have some people that do not want to do anything to the law to fix it. And you've got other people that are willing to do it but have a long-term vision of repealing Obamacare. What we view at Americans for Prosperity, we want to help patients right now. I think it's really cavalier for people to say, we're not going to touch this law and we're going to disregard patients just because we need to fully repeal it. I think there's some short-term things that we can do to help the American people with still keeping our eye on the ball that this law is terrible and that we've got to eventually repeal it. But there's some certain things, like we believe that we can repeal the medical device tax. And I see some bipartisan support for that in the United States Senate. If you look at Al Franken from Minnesota, he is one of the most liberal senators we've got. But there's a large medical device company in Minnesota called Medtronic that has lost lots of jobs and lost lots of business. So we can repeal the medical device tax that will not only bring more jobs to some of these states, but also be able to lower the cost of devices for patients. And that's what we really want to do with AFPs. We want to help people. So I think that's one thing that we can do. And also, restoring the 40-hour work week. The House of Representatives already passed that. But due to the law and due to the terms of the health care law, people had to redefine basically what the work week was, because Obama's current definition was 30 hours. Now I was thinking, how in the world can you redefine the 40-hour work week? That's a part of the American fabric. But essentially, due to the Obamacare, employers had to readjust people's hours per week, which has hurt families. So those are two quick measures I think we can do that make sense, that has bipartisan support. But keep our eye on the ball that we've got to repeal Obamacare, but we better put together a solution that will help the American people. And because right now, healthcare is absolutely a mess. It's in complete disarray. No matter what you see on Wall Street, you saw that hospitals and everybody in the healthcare industry, that their stocks were rising. But what's more important is people's policies, their premiums are rising. People continue to lose their health care coverage they enjoyed that was right for their family. So as some people benefited, other people suffered, and we shouldn't be in the business of picking winners and losers, and government's got no business being in health care.
Certainly on the day that the Obamacare decision was made, I put up a post, and I don't have it up in front of me because it just came to me in response to what you said, but there was a hospital that just announced it was laying 375 workers off directly due to Obamacare and the low rate of reimbursements, that it just can't afford to have these people going or staying on the payroll that were direct patient care folks. They had to let them go. And you're talking about the medical devices. We're seeing it in the direct patient stuff. And what has infuriated me the most was the rumors, and I haven't seen them substantiated, but I tend to believe them, that there were a lot of D.C. Republicans that were absolutely elated over the Obamacare decision because it meant that they didn't have to do the hard work that we elected them for to try to fight this thing. They got a buy, and they're ecstatic. So when you talk about the medical device tax and some of the other things, the work week, do you really think that we can trust the Republicans to do the right thing? How many Democrats are going to go against Obamacare given this decision by the Supreme Court? Politically, can you get this done?
I think on those two issues you can. Especially when you talk about the 40-hour work week. If you talk to anybody, and it doesn't matter which generation, doesn't matter what part of the country, if you ask them what is full-time work in a week, they'll all say 40 hours. And when people are having their hours cut and when they're having to work additional jobs to provide for their family, that is a bipartisan issue that we've got to fix. And we've seen that with a bipartisan majority in the House. I'm sure we can get that in the Senate, especially with the repealing the medical device tax. I talked about Al Franken up in Minnesota. There's also large, I think it's Boston Scientific up in Massachusetts, which is a big provider. So that you've got their delegation there for it. So there's some common sense things that we can do, but we've got to really lean in on these so-called conservatives and have them do the right thing, whether it's Obamacare or XM or just spending in general. We've seen that a lot of these politicians, as you said before, they don't want to make the hard decisions. They're all focused on politics. They're all focused on their reelection, and they're not focused on doing the right thing. And we as people need to hold these people accountable, because when I talk to a friend of mine whose sister has serious back problems, he said that the doctor kept on pushing physical therapy, and it wasn't working. And her brother said, well, why don't you get an MRI? And the doctor said, well, MRIs are really expensive. And it's unbelievable. We used to be able to, under healthcare before Obamacare, we didn't have, doctors had to make decisions based off of the government and what the government was going to pay for or not pay for. It's really a sad day when it comes to healthcare in this country.
Well, Mark, we've reached the end of this segment, and I want to thank you so much for your time, and good luck, and hopefully I will see you again up here in Manchester soon.
Sounds good. I'll see you guys next month.
All right. You have a good weekend.
Take care.
Bye-bye. All right. Thank you very much to Mark Lucas, Regional Director for Americans for Prosperity. This is the closing moments of our program. And, of course, thank you very much, Skip, for coming in and filling in for Mike and obviously bringing lots of great questions.
Well, thank you. Thank you. A lot of people may have noticed, a couple have noticed that I haven't been writing at Granite Rock for a while, haven't been here except in an emergency where another set of technical hands were needed. Yes, folks, I have been on a sabbatical after 9 years and 5 days. I think I had burnt myself out of, just posting like a madman most days. And I was finding that I needed to rejigger and rebalance my life. So that's what I've been doing the last month or so. And I don't think that my rehabilitation is over, although you may have seen some posts. You may see some posts here and there as I try to work through so I can say, I'm not just a blogger. That's not what defines me anymore.
All right. Well, we are going to define the end of the program by saying goodbye and hoping we are not here next week. We are here, and no, 4th we're not here, the 11th we're at CNHT. We will be back in a couple of weeks. Stay tuned. We'll still be posting stuff.
Yeah, baby!
When asked whether she still supports Obamacare, Senator Jeanne Shaheen said,
"Yes, I do continue to support the law. We're beginning to see some positive results."
How can Senator Shaheen say we're seeing positive results when 22,000 of our neighbors have already lost their health insurance? What's worse, the Boston Globe reports the state's only health insurance provider radically reduced the number of hospitals in their network, forcing some people to drive over an hour for lab work, even when there's a hospital within a few miles of their home. When pressed about lack of access, Shaheen said,
"There are some hospitals that are not covered, unfortunately, and I certainly hope that's going to change."
Jeanne Shaheen promised us we could keep our doctors and our healthcare coverage. Now she hopes we can get to a local hospital? Call Senator Shaheen at 603-647-7500. Tell her we need more than hope. We need leadership. Paid for by Citizens for a Strong New Hampshire.
Senator Jeanne Shaheen said, if you like your current health plan, you can keep it. That's not true, Senator. 22,000 New Hampshire citizens have been kicked off their insurance plans. Hospitals in Rochester, Concord, and Portsmouth, they aren't allowed to provide care under the exchange. Senator, you were wrong in your comments. You should apologize for your misleading remarks. I'm calling Senator Shaheen at 750-3004 and telling her I want my doctor back. You should too.
Paid for by saberpac.org, not authorized by any candidate or candidate committee.
All of the music on this program comes to us through Creative Commons licensing from Kevin MacLeod at Incompetech.com. The opinions expressed on this program are those of the speakers, not necessarily those of CNHT, GraniteRock.com, or anyone else for that matter.
GrokTALK.